Welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast, where we believe coaching solves everything.
Welcome back, everybody, to the I Love Coaching podcast. My name is Adam Roach, your host, and today I have a very special guest with us today. You know, inside the I Love Coaching organization, we have three key areas that we focus on. That's your health, that's your wealth, and that's your relationships. We're going to dive into the health category, and we're going to go in deep. We're going to go in so deep. I'm bringing my own doctor, my friend, someone that has helped me out on a journey now for probably the last 4 or 5 months that I met at an event. And we're going to go into that, but I want to introduce Dr. David Geier. Dr. David Geier, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, Adam, thanks for having me. It's always good talking to you anyway, but then given the chance to talk about what you and I both love to a wider audience, really, really appreciate it.
Right, absolutely. So thanks for being here. We always have an intro with the I Love Coaching podcast, and it goes like this. You were born, and then what happened? So give us a little background on who you are and where you came from and how do we get here today?
Well, I grew up, we moved all over. My dad was a pediatrician and then switched to radiology. So that's, medical school, but then 2 different residencies. He spent a couple of years as a pediatrician in the Air Force. So we moved around a lot, but I played sports and exercised my whole childhood, was always going to go into business actually until my freshman year of college. I almost died after a run. Turns out I had gone into what's known as anaphylactic shock, where basically a life-threatening allergic reaction. But the doctors really couldn't figure out, they couldn't at all figure out what caused it. And that was not okay with me, somebody who loved to exercise, but all of a sudden now I'm scared to run. And so decided I'm going to go to medical school, get to medical school, decide, hey, I want to work with athletes and active people and get them back into their pre-injury state, whether it's surgery or anything else. And so that's what I did. Residency, sports medicine fellowship, then have been a practicing orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist for 16 years. Wow. Until just recently pivoting, as you well know, still doing orthopedics and sports medicine, but really focused on trying to get people's bodies to heal naturally without surgery and try to help them improve their physical performance so that they feel and perform their best for years and years to come.
Yeah, I absolutely love that story. You know our story. I met you at an event where you were speaking, and I went simply because it was a conversation on the healing process. And I went for my kids, actually. And when you shared your story of how when you were a freshman and you were running and you went into this serious life-threatening situation, and that's what forced you into the medicine space, what an incredible story that was. And to our listeners right now, keep there for a second. What would you say to someone that maybe has had a situation where they were like, gosh, I don't know what my body's doing here, but it'll maybe get better, right? What would you say to someone that you were going on a run and you went flat on your back, right? What would you, just curious there.
One of the challenges we have in this country, and maybe it's in most of the world, but it really seems to be an American phenomenon, is that we only deal with things that are imminent, that we feel. So if you trip and fall and break your ankle, which I have also done, you deal with that. It's like, hey, it's time to do something. But we don't tend to be so good at preventing problems long-term. If it's not bothering us now, we put it way off. And one of the books that you and I have actually talked about, David Sinclair's Lifespan, he talks about, I think it was David Sinclair that talks about whack-a-mole medicine. Basically, we wait for a problem to come up and then we hit it. And both with orthopedics, in terms of preventing arthritis rather than getting a knee or hip replacement once it's already happened, or just feeling your best from a ability to walk up and down the stairs without getting out of breath, being able to play with your kids and not hurt. All of these things require being proactive and taking steps now, even though it doesn't seem like it's anything you need to deal with right now.
Yeah, for sure. It's so funny is that also goes true in business. You know this, I know this. We business entrepreneurs have a tendency to wait until there is a crisis and then they take action. Holy cow, let me start doing a P&L now that I realize I don't have any money, right? So that's in the health space. It's exactly the same way, that very reactive versus being proactive, which is how you and I got together, is my, my journey with my father and him passing and wanting to be proactive and outlived. If there was one thing I can beat my dad at, he died at 69. I'm definitely going to beat him living past 69. So that'll be the first thing I ever beat my dad at. And so with that being said, what took you into this now proactive approach to understanding how to live longer?
I would love to have a definitive answer, but I'm not really sure it's any more profound than it's just something I've always cared about. Even in my time, in my academic sports medicine practice for 8 years, and then in a hospital-based practice, it was really injury focused. I'm going to fix this problem. But it was really when I started buying into this. I went through a period, actually at the end of my time at the academic hospital, where I went through true burnout. I mean, I was miserable. I was putting on weight. I wasn't sleeping. I was dreading every day I was going to work. And yeah, there's a work component to that and a personal component to that for sure, but it was a huge health component. And actually, in response to that, one of my friends suggested that I see a doctor who runs the practice where I am now. And so I started taking these steps and started feeling better. I started having more energy. And then it sort of transitioned a little bit to, all right, I want to see what else is out there, what isn't necessarily approved by the insurance companies or the FDA, but that there's research for to give me more energy or to improve my muscle strength or lose body fat so that I just don't feel lethargic, so that I sleep better. All of these things were things that I was personally interested in. And then when I was like, wow, this is really helping me, I started to think, there really aren't people doing this very much, at least here in Charleston where I am. But really, I mean, it's really neglected across the country. And so I took a personal interest of mine and said, hey, I feel like there's other people like me. And I know you and I are very similar. There's a lot of people that, hey, they want more than just, hey, if I have some symptom of disease, if I get a cold, I get something, I'm going to take pills for it. But they want more than that. They want to thrive instead of just getting by. And that's where I said, hey, I can do this for other people.
Yeah, and do it extremely well. You have. So let's go back to, I want to educate our listeners right now on the simplicity of aging. Right. So throughout our process, through what I've listened to Sinclair and read, your body has this natural progression of getting through puberty, getting to a sexual state, getting to a part, which I don't know if it ever goes away, getting to a part that then your body starts to shut down and stop releasing certain, I'll sound like a non-doctor here, chemicals, if you will, inside of your body, that then your body actually goes into this dying process, right?
Right.
So when's that, just for our listeners, when does that process kind of start? When do we start to see declines as humans?
It starts in your 20s, even though you probably won't see any evidence of it, assuming that you're reasonably healthy and not, cancer or something like that. But if you're reasonably healthy, you may not see the effects of that until your 50s. Things like peptides, which we may talk about, these short chains of amino acids that are naturally made in our bodies. There's like 7,000 that have been identified. We have tons of those in our teenage years and in our 20s, and they help, muscles, tendon, ligaments heal. They help your heart. They help your brain. They help your sex drive. They help your skin. There's all sorts of things that they help, but they start to drop with age. And as that happens, you see some of the age-related changes in the brain, things like Alzheimer's and dementia, in the heart, things like cardiovascular disease, in the body, things like arthritis, or in the joints. And so that's one change. Things like mitochondrial energy. And I don't want to get too technical about all this, but those, if you remember from high school biology, the powerhouses of the cells that make all of our energy, that starts to decline with age. And then it's a genetic thing. The telomeres, the caps on the ends of the chromosomes that basically protect our DNA, they get shorter and shorter as we get older, because each time the cell divides, it takes some of the telomere off. When those telomeres are gone, then your DNA can't repair itself. Those cells die. Those cells die. If they stick around, then they release all kinds of bad proteins that cause all kinds of problems throughout the body. So there's a number of different, and there's probably more pathways than that I'm just the ones that we've really figured out over the last 5 years. But all of that process starts very young. But what we're figuring out is those are all things that we can modify. They're not just givens that it's going to happen. We're figuring out ways to target each of those pathways to help people not just live longer. That isn't the goal, but it's to help them feel great as they live longer.
Yeah. I'm just taking some notes here. Think about that. So I want to go back to what you said. It starts in your 20s. And sometimes we don't see the effects of that process or that progression or regression, whichever we want to look at it, until we get in our 40s and 50s. When you and I met, I was a little tired, and everybody was, Adam, you have so much energy. I'm like, yeah, I get a little tired though, right? There's certain times I get tired. You and I met, we started talking about these things. We had that in common. I really want to do a lot more research. So I started doing some research. We got into now peptides, and let's progress this conversation into peptides. So they're amino acids, and not many people, at least the people that I talk to now that I'm in this space of peptide world, know what peptides are. So let's talk to our listeners here and just talk to them in a layman's sense of what is a peptide and how does it help us?
Peptides are short proteins, are probably the best way to say it, that are naturally made in our bodies. But fortunately, laboratories and pharmacies have figured out how to synthesize them so that you can give basically pill or injectable forms of basically an identical chemical structure. So it's basically the same thing. For instance, one that I like, BPC 157, which is made from our stomachs. Labs have figured out how to make it in a pill form or an injectable form and have the same functions. And one of the things, a good example of it to sort of help people understand, again, they affect all, different peptides affect all different parts of the body. But one of the theories behind why people in their 50s get Achilles tendon ruptures or biceps tendon ruptures, but teenagers and kids and young adults in their 20s don't, is that a substance like BPC 157 or thymosin beta 4, which are two common musculoskeletal peptides, they drop off dramatically in your 40s and 50s. So your body the collagen isn't as strong and it can't repair itself from micro injuries. That's why a lot of people with Achilles ruptures a lot of times have Achilles tendonitis leading up to it. And so as our levels of peptides start to drop, we start to develop more of these muscle and tendon injuries. And I just use that as one example. There's examples of peptides in terms of drops of different peptides might at least partially explain why we get higher rates of insulin resistance and diabetes, but also what comes with that, obesity and decline in muscle mass. And so they're all different peptides. There's 7,000 naturally made, but there's well over 100 that are available essentially as medications that have all sorts of different effects. And depending on what an individual's problems are, sometimes one peptide or a combination of peptides can have a dramatic effect in how they feel and preventing disease down the road.
Yeah, for sure. So I came to you originally. I've been, as you know, and I don't know if many of our listeners know, I've been a tennis player my entire life. And now my kids are playing tennis. They're playing tennis at a really high level. And it pained me both mentally, physically, and emotionally not to be able to hit balls with them because my arm was hurting. Right. And that's one of the reasons why I said, okay, fine. My dad always taught me to sit in front of the room and go introduce yourself to the speaker if you felt that there was a good connection there, and hence what I did. Right. And then so I came to you. And you and I just had a simple little conversation around this. We did a few little procedures where I don't remember what that thing was called. That
Shockwave.
What was it called? Shockwave. Yeah. Shockwave. And then though you said, hey, check out this peptide. Give it a shot. It's something you can take every single day. And that was probably about 3 months ago. And I want to let you know, and I don't know if I've shared this with you, I can go out now and hit with my son and have no problems or no effects thereafter because I think it's healed, right? It feels good for the first time in probably 3 or 4 years, actually. So will you explain to our listeners how you kind of broke down to me how my arm wasn't recovering, but then how through this simple little process, the peptides helped my body recover?
Sure. A lot of these problems are cellular or microscopic. I mean, yes, you tear your Achilles tendon, or in your case, if you had torn that tendon off your elbow, that would be a whole different structure. But in our 40s and 50s, that's not typically what we do. We just do a lot of physical activity, and you get these microscopic tears that in our 20s and 30s, those heal pretty well. But as you get into your 40s and 50s, they don't heal very well. And traditional orthopedic surgery generally, and I was this way for 15 years of practice, you're just trying to fix it structurally. So it's either surgery if it's completely torn, or it's some kind of quick fix like a cortisone shot. But the problem is a lot of those quick fixes, especially cortisone and other steroids, actually make the problem worse. Yes, you feel better short term, but it actually makes it less likely to heal and more likely to rupture. So what you and I discussed, both with Shockwave, which is kind of what it sounds, it's this device that delivers electrical impulses. And yeah, it's kind of uncomfortable, but it helps your body deliver blood, and then the inflammatory markers that help, those inflammatory proteins that help that tendon heal. And really help that collagen, just quicker recovery and more complete recovery, but also things like peptides. You're trying to augment your body's ability to heal naturally. Generally, that's what all of this is we're trying to help your body heal naturally rather than use some sort of artificial means to replace something or just tack it back down in the case of surgery for orthopedic problems.
Yeah. And you told me about the collagen, right? The way the collagen was laying, the way the collagen was stacking. And that was fascinating to me, because I think you were talking about how it laid down when it comes to recover something. And as we get older, I think the terminology was, and I'll get really scientific here, like Lincoln logs, I think you might have said. And that has stuck with me. And so every time I think about that peptide that I take in the morning, I'm thinking, lay down on my arm, make it feel better. Lay down on there, make it feel better.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? What's that Lincoln log effect mean when it comes to repairing?
Yeah, the game I like to use, and I probably need to be careful about this. The game manufacturer, if they ever see me give a talk on this, they're going to sue me for it. But I equate it to Lincoln logs are a good example, or pickup sticks. If you remember that, where you drop the sticks and they're kind of all over the place. When you tear a muscle, you tear a tendon or ligament. All these cells, the neutrophils and fibroblasts and all, they create this scar tissue that is like the sticks and pickup sticks, where they're all over the place, kind of turned in all different ways. And that's why you get, you hear people talk about knots in their muscle, you hear scar tissue. And what is better is if you can get those tissues and ultimately the collagen fibers, whether it's muscle, tendon, or ligament, to heal in a longitudinal orientation, lined up side by side with their normal cross links. And that's one of the things that peptides help do. Now, it's not just peptides. There's physical therapy can help that, but even physical therapy isn't attacking at it at a cellular and biological level. So it helps your body heal faster, but in a much more natural way, so that tissue is as strong as it was before.
Yeah. And I will be the first to say that it is. And even so much so, I mean, back again, pre-you, it was even hard to do like a dumbbell curl. And sure enough, today was bicep day, Doc, and it was just fine. It was just fine. Okay, now let's continue to transition here into now peptides making you feel better. Peptides that can help with some fat loss. And again, guys, I'm speaking from my own experience here, and I will happily share what I've been doing with the guidance of a doctor to help. So I'll walk through my experience. Number one, I've done a blood hormone test, you want to call it. So we did the blood hormone test, and you went through and you looked at all my results, right?
Yes.
Yep. So you looked at all the results. We talked about just about everything. I think it's like 3 or 4 pages long. And we spent a good 30 minutes, 40 minutes on that. And then I shared with you that my goal was to reduce some body fat, to increase muscle, but also give me energy again, right? Give me that energy. So at 2:30, I'm not wanting to take a nap, so I can continue to go as if I was 20 years old again. And what I love what Sinclair says in some of his podcasts, he says, the younger you are on the inside, it will show on the outside, right? And so that's kind of what we've talked about. So let's talk about some of those CJC 1295, Mod S, C, and those types of things that I'm playing with.
That's really one of the keys, and one of the criticisms of anti-aging medicine. Even though I'm an orthopedic surgeon, I'm also in the process of getting board certified in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. People seem to think, the lay public, that this is all about appearance, and that's part of it. And I'm a big fan of people feeling that they look great, because if you feel like you look good, the self-confidence and the mental health benefits, I'm for all of that. But it's way more than that. And I would agree with what you said and what Dr. Sinclair said, that it starts on the inside. And so when people think about, you mentioned CJC 1295, which is a human growth hormone releasing peptide. The analogy I use, people, so our bodies naturally make human growth hormone, tons in our childhood up into our 20s, but it really drops off pretty fast. It's still in our brains, it's just not being released. And what this peptide CJC does is it basically causes your body to release the growth hormone that it's already making. The analogy I like to use is, if you're going skydiving and you're on the plane by the door and you're about to jump, the instructor kicks you out of the plane. Well, the peptide CJC is the instructor. It's kicking the growth hormone out into your body to be used. And you would think, all right, well, this is to get bigger and stronger, but really that's not, I mean, unless you took huge amounts of it, you're not going to be a bodybuilder with it. We're just talking about small increases in lean muscle mass, and it may be sizable. I mean, you'll notice a difference, but we're not talking about powerlifting here. But increases in lean muscle mass, decreases in body fat, especially visceral fat, the very dangerous fat that you can't see, that's around your liver and intestines and stomach, and that really is linked to cardiovascular disease and death. It's about improving your body composition. So yes, you look better, but as you say, you change your body composition, even 10%, 20%, your energy is going to be so much better. You're going to burn calories with exercise so much better. You're going to feel better if you do turn your ankle or do something with sports. One, that'll probably be less likely to happen. But two, you'll recover from those better with better body composition. And so just that as one example is a critical part to how in your 40s, 50s, and beyond, just a simple medication can make you feel, and yes, look so much better.
Right. And again, that was my motivation. So again, I'm still speaking about myself. My motivation in this space was that I could continue to play tennis with my kids at a high level, high enough that they couldn't beat me yet. Let's just put it that way. And ironically, my son beat me about 3 or 4 weeks ago. He did beat me in a set. And that was the first time. He's 13 years old. So good job, Addison.
Those kids get stronger at that age. It gets tough.
And faster, and definitely stamina. So that was my motivation behind this, was to stay up with my kids, because that's truly my passion, is getting out there. And then of course with my father. So now, as we talk to these listeners, if they want to, what would you suggest to someone that is, I'm tired, I'm in my mid 40s, maybe early 50s. It seems like it's the same soup reheated every single day. I have to have my 3 to 4 cups of coffee to get going. By the time I come home, I'm done. It just feels like I'm now on the other side of that hump. Let's just talk to them. What do we say to them outside? Let's just hypothetically say that we know that they want to get more energy. They want to be more active. They want to feel as if they don't have to have those 10 cups of coffee.
Well, it's not a one size fits all prescription. And so it becomes very important to address each person's individual problems. And you mentioned how you started with an entire blood work panel that looks at hormones, it looks at thyroid. Those are 2 areas that you just need to see where you stand, because those can be low-hanging fruit in terms of helping people feel better, have more energy, sleep better, better mental health, weight loss, all of that. So knowing where you stand, and all of that starts to change in your late 30s and 40s. That was actually, you came in kind of lucky. Yours were good. I shouldn't divulge your stuff, and I won't get into specifics, but your labs were a lot better. When I came in, one of my hormone levels was literally, I kid you not, was 0. And so that's a good place to know, because some of the peptides, whether it's MOD-SC, which I'm a big believer in for energy, even though it's known more for weight loss, I think for performance and energy, MOD-SC is fantastic. I'm a big believer in CJC. In fact, I just got another prescription for myself yesterday because I sleep so so much better on it than I do when I'm off of it, in addition to the muscle and fat law, all of that. But if you just start with that, but you have an underlying really low testosterone or really high estrogen, or your thyroid hormone is non-existent or very low, or your cortisol, your stress hormones are all over the map. Those kind of things are important to know, because sometimes fixing some of those might be a better place to start. And then you add the peptides. And then in my world, you also factor in, are people dealing with injuries or arthritis? Because that a lot of times influences. If you are, there's some things that can really be low hanging fruit to help your joints feel better, less pain, so that all of this just leads to better physical feeling and performance.
Mm-hmm. And I love what you touched on there. And we didn't really talk about this, but you and I both wear our Oura rings all the time. We track that sleep. How important sleep truly is to recovery? Right? How important?
It's amazingly important. In fact,
sleep is.
Yeah, I was interviewed by Ariana Huffington years ago for her book, The Sleep Revolution, because I had written this article about how sleep is probably, I can't remember my quote. It's been 5-6 years now, but it was something to the effect of it. It's as important as food is to your physical recovery. I was talking like sports and endurance athletes, but I would argue it's that way for everybody. Not that really one's more important than the other. If you eat a bunch of trash, a really bad diet, you're going to feel bad too. But if you're constantly not getting enough sleep and fueling yourself with caffeine, especially not getting the deep restorative sleep, that will start to pick up with time. You're going to start getting insulin resistance and body fat develop around your abdomen, which is not just a bad look. It's very unhealthy. But you're going to start getting more injuries. You're going to start having mental cognitive issues. Your brain needs that sleep to recover. And again, you may not notice it after one night or after 2 nights, but if you do it long enough, all of a sudden you're going to look at yourself in the mirror and go, man, what is wrong? There's probably very little that I would say, if you're going to start somewhere, not go to a doctor, I'm just going to fix one thing. It'd be 1 and 1A between fixing your diet and fixing your sleep, both critically important.
Yeah, could not agree more. And again, for those that know me, I'm a very regimented guy. And I love my early mornings at the gym. I love my early morning journaling, devotion, and I get into tracking everything. And it was probably 2 or 3 years ago when I started wearing the Oura ring that if my score, another tracking, if my score in a deep sleep space or if my score from a sleep wasn't good enough, I'd actually attempt to try to go back to sleep, because I knew how important that was for my day to be prepared to give what I had to give, which was energy, right?
Yeah. Well, and one of the other things with the Oura ring, and there's a lot of ways to track your sleep. I don't want to suggest, I'm not tied to Oura, even though I think it's fantastic. The data you get from it's great. And it's one of the most overused sayings ever, but it's really applicable here. What gets measured gets managed. I don't remember exactly how that goes, but once you start just looking at those numbers, looking at your readiness score, looking at your deep sleep is so important. Most people vastly overestimate the amount of sleep they get through no fault of their own. I mean, some of it's, you like to say you got more than you did, but people take longer to fall asleep than they realize. They wake up much more in the night than they realize, and they get very much less restorative sleep than they realize. And so you don't know it until you track it. And then you can start seeing the effects of, all right, I had a couple of glasses of wine that night. What change did it have? Did I eat a lot of fatty foods, or did I eat late at night? Did that have an effect? Did I work out too late? Did that have an effect? Did I have a cup of coffee at 4 or 5 in the afternoon? Did that have an effect? And you can start what you and I really love doing. You can start almost hacking your behavior and your body based on, hey, this works for me and this doesn't. Great example of this, and it's not just keto, but just or not just sleep, but it's tracking generally. Is keto, I think, is great for so many people. It didn't work for me. My LDL went through the roof. I didn't really feel that much better, but I wouldn't know that if I didn't try it and pay attention to what kinds of effects it had. And so I say that with sleep. you got to know where you are before you can improve it. And so whether it's the Oura Ring, there's a number of different phone apps. I have some issues with using your phone to do it, having a phone near you at night. But regardless, tracking your sleep, critically important. And it's a piece of cake. It's just, in this case, it's a ring you wear that you basically just charge every so often, and you turn the app on once a day. And it'll make a dramatic difference in your overall well-being. That's one that I feel very strongly about. I really should reach out to Oura and say, hey, I'll promote your thing. That's how much I believe in it. I really do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And just if we're keeping track at home, or if you and I are in a competition, I had an 88 readiness today. So that was
I had an 86. I did try to take a nap a little while ago because I know coming up tonight, I may not get a whole lot of sleep because I'm going out to see some friends. And so I sort of tried to get ahead. But the day's so busy, that might be tough. I am aiming for, over 2022, one of my health goals this year, this is a true thing, you'll appreciate this, is to average my readiness score average every day for 365 days. I want to average an 85, which 85 or above is optimal. Right now, I'm right around 84 through no fault of my own. Sometimes you're sick and it really plummets your score, or things happen. But I want to hit 85 just because I know I've put that much emphasis on sleep and its importance in my health. And so we'll see how it goes.
Yep. I love that. I love that goal. I'm going to circle that here in my notes. I'm going to track you for that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic. I have no doubt our listeners not only probably took a lot of notes, but I'm sure they paused it and went back and listened to it again. If you haven't, pause it, go back and listen to this again, because in my opinion, this is great health information. How can they come find you? How can they come work with? How can they come get coached up by you?
The first place you can find out, one of the best place to find me is on my website, which has links to all my social media, drdavidgeier.com. I am the medical expert for 2 TV stations here in Charleston, South Carolina. So all my segments that I do basically 7 days a week are on there. Articles, I've written 3,000 articles. I do podcasts, all of that's on there. So go there. If you would like to see me as a patient, as Adam does, and a lot of people do, whether it's for an orthopedic injury or, as we're talking about, feeling better, performing better. I see patients in Charleston, South Carolina, and in Charlotte, North Carolina, at a practice called Better Life Carolinas. If you're coming in from out of town, and I have a lot of patients from out of town, we have people come to Charleston because, hey, it's Charleston. It's amazing, right? But it's also more convenient. That's where our pharmacy is. It's just from a logistical standpoint, that works a little bit better. And again, I'm one of the, and I say this not to brag, but I just looked this up in the database as I prepare to take my anti-aging and regenerative medicine boards. There's only, that I can tell, 2 other orthopedic surgeons that are special in the United States that have both board certifications, or in my case, it'll be 3rd. So I feel like that there's a lot of things that I can offer you that aren't just cortisone shots, physical therapy, or surgery that will help you feel amazing. Whether you have an injury or you don't, you'll feel better. Now, if you don't want to come to Charleston and see me as a patient, but you do want to talk peptides and that kind of thing, you and I actually haven't talked about this, but I am going to start at some point coaching, because I do want to get one of the things. Actually, I hope you have a couple minutes. I would tell you one real quick thing. So I'm fascinated in behavioral science. I actually got into a master's program at the London School of Economics, but because of COVID, I just didn't want to go to London for a long period of time. And then I transitioned this practice. So I may go back and do that at some point, but I am fascinated in helping people take steps to improve their health more than I can just do once a month or every so often in the office or by phone with my patients. And so I'm really good. I'm going to probably start this program where, yes, you'd still come to my patients. We'd talk about peptides and hormones and all that kind of thing. But then I will work with you to help you improve your exercise. Or if you haven't exercised, I can teach you to start exercising. I can radically overhaul your diet so that you feel better, overhaul your sleep. But that's a lot to ask of just a 1 hour appointment in the office. So that's coming soon. I just have got a lot of things on my plate. But if you're interested in that, certainly reach out to me through my website, and we can talk about lots of different ways to work together.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. I am the recruiting king. So I just want to be careful. There might be an I Love Coaching around the corner with the good doctor here. That could be fun.
Yeah.
Well,
I think, it's all about whether it's, you just doing the research, like you and I have both read Lifespan, and I'm about to start Life Force by Tony Robbins. But there's a lot of, if you just care about this stuff and then just make changes on your own, fantastic, improving your diet, improving your exercise, improving your sleep, and meditating and all of. I'm all for it. But if you're like, hey, I'm living as good as I can and need a boost, that's where you and I are in this process, is that, hey, we're doing everything we can. Let's look at peptides. Let's look at, in my case, at least, I don't mind admitting it, certain hormones. Those can all be a good thing. Any way that I admire anybody that says, hey, I want to feel great, take charge of my health for me, for my family. I admire you. And if there's any way I can help, please let me know how I can.
And by all means, I 100% support this. And I'll share this real quick. So this is a conversation between you and I will share it now with everybody else. So a couple of weeks ago, I went in, I talked to everybody, and they said, well, we want you to start doing some level 2 cardio. And I had no idea what level 2 cardio is. And they were like, Adam, no more HIIT and no more sprinting on the treadmill. Let's try this level 2 cardio. And it was explained to me that it was being able to do cardio and still have a conversation. So I said, do I get to go for a walk? And it was like, yes. So I'll let you know. So clearly I'm a tracking freak.
Yeah, I'm curious how it's gone for you. I remember this conversation.
Mean to do this. I looked at my phone Sunday after Sunday evening, and I'd walked 32 miles last week.
Wow, that is awesome.
Just by saying 30 minutes a day, I'm just going to go for a walk. And that's pretty much what it did. Boy, I feel great simply because of a 30-minute walk. Yeah.
And for those of you listening, that isn't necessarily a recommendation for everybody. It's a good example of why all of this should be personalized.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of HIIT training. He's trying to achieve a very specific goal. And that's why the recommendations are a little different. And that's where sometimes, more than just reading the books and going to the websites, that's where actually having a coach or a doctor help guide you through this can be really important, because not everybody's goals are the same. Not everybody starts at the same place.
Right. Very, very true. Well, Dr. David Geier, appreciate your time, appreciate your energy, appreciate your advice here. And I have no doubt we're going to have you back on the I Love Coaching podcast real soon, because I'm sure we have a lot of questions. Everybody, thanks for listening. If this podcast was great for you, go give us a great review. And if it wasn't, that's okay. Go give us another review and let us know what you think about the I Love Coaching podcast. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.